Okay, teachers, this is day 3 of our Active Inspire training, Introduction to Browsers. And it's not so much an introduction anymore. You can find a video that briefly goes into each browser online, and this will be online shortly as well. But this week I've referred a lot to the browsers, and these browsers are very powerful tools. With each browser there are tons that you can do. And each one of these things that you see, I mean, like this is just obviously you know what the scroll bar means, but talk about, you know, if you want to quickly access all of them, I'm just zooming back and forth, and this is a quick way to go from one thing to the next. Okay, and this one I believe was an example of inserting a page, and I used a desktop snapshot to do this. Okay, but you obviously can do all kinds of other things. You can add activities or learner response activities, templates, all kinds of things. Okay, so these are things that you can do all within the page browser. And it is a very powerful tool. If you want to export a page, say there's a page you really liked that you want to use in another lesson, you can export the page right from here. You can also pick the pen tool and start using it. You can add an insert question if you have a voting system. So there's so many things. Setting background. There's so many places you can set a background, and this is one of them. Okay. Now we'll show earlier or later. We'll show adding a grid, and here you can hide a grid and or unhide it, and you can even design the grid, which is really fun. Although I think most people would just use the grids that are already built into the resources, which is what we're talking about next. But as you can see here, you can use the page browser to quickly navigate pages, export pages, reorder pages, change background, and so forth. So that's a great tool. Now we're going to go on to the resource browser, which is on the next page here. Now, as you can see here, we have several things. Okay, the resources that are considered what they call my resources, it doesn't have a lot of information. It has profiles, ticker tapes, and so forth. But the shared resources is what you'll use for most of what you do. Okay. Notice these ones have a little triangle on here. I'm sure you know what these are, but you're not going to be able to access anything inside of these that have the triangle, because the triangle means they have folders. Now these folders also have the same thing. So you have activities in here and tons and tons of things. Okay, great place to play checkers or Connect 4 or anything like that. Okay, and puzzles and spelling, all kinds of things. You name it, it's you're probably going to find something related to it, something you can turn into that. Okay. Activities that are language learner response, that's mostly for those with voting browsers. Okay. Templates, the 16:9, we have templates like this that have just different things in it. And here's an example. Anytime it has lorem ipsum, that means that's something you can edit and change it into something else. Again, this is this looks to me like it's a learner response type thing. It doesn't have to be. If you're like, you need something that looks like this, make it that. Same thing with this. There you go. That could be something they call bell work or anything else like that. Okay. Um, general templates, got tons of these. Okay. And these are interactive, so you can change them. So great things. Then you've got themes, for example, brick. Okay. Now these look to me like they're presentation. Something that we wanted to impress upon you is that we want you to use this mostly for the students to use, to become involved, to answer questions on, and the more interactive for the students, the better. However, it does come equipped with tools that allow you to make some really nice looking presentations that you can build activities into. Okay, so yes, backgrounds. There are anything from illustration backgrounds to paper backgrounds, patterns, photographs, textures, you name it. And you can find plenty of it also on Promethean Planet. Grids. Now I mentioned grids not too long ago. Here's an example of what a grid looks like. I'm going to pull it out here and you can see it behind there. Let's go to the next page and pull the grids out. Okay, so there's that grid, or dots, or so if something looks like it's something you might use, don't go off of this preview, go off of this one. Okay, but notice I'm just pulling it out and looking at it, and we only have one background at a time. Okay, so as you can see, there's plenty here for you to use for math. Lined, okay, or vertical lined, or you've got manuscript paper, or writing grid. There's XY lined, okay. Most of these have solid or dotted lines. Okay, so just a quick tour of this is all I'm trying to provide. Then we've got lesson building tools, from buttons. All of these things become buttons that you can program, to gadgets. Gadgets usually come pre-programmed, so you can edit these things. Okay, so there's that. Set it to an hour. Okay, you have an hour to write this essay. Yeah, I don't know, but there you have it. Or an hour till recess, and you set it. Okay. Another thing, as you do these things, we have something called the rubber stamp. Okay, the rubber stamp makes it so you don't have to drag it. You can just hit it somewhere on the board, put it periodically here and there, and there you have it. Okay. Now, if you want to get rid of it, usually I push escape. I'm sure there's another way of doing it, but yeah. Okay. Questions and question layouts. These are things you could use in either what's called the learner response, like the voting system, or if you were to actually do a class test, they could do it that way. So those are all different lesson building tools, and I encourage you to become familiar with it, just like we asked you to become familiar with Promethean Planet. And on Promethean Planet you can find resource packs which give you even more stuff to look through. Another great area that resources can add to your presentation is sounds. Okay, so we've got effects. Okay, if you double click, it just sends it onto the page. Okay, so they can make a presentation fun, and so forth. And we can add music. Okay, so like for example, this is a bongo. Okay, not the best sound in the world, but it makes it nice. Okay, all kinds of things for you to look through. That's the resource browser. Obviously, it's a useful tool, and if you don't know if you know you want something that has something in it, you can always search for it. Now, obviously, if I search for music and I hit enter, nothing comes up. But if I search for manuscript, there's our manuscript paper. Okay, anything that's set as a background, you type background and it will come up. Okay, so not only do we have the illustration ones, but we also have the paper and the shapes or patterns and the photo backgrounds. Okay, so there's the search option in the resource browser. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is the object browser. Now, we've already gone over this, but now would be a great time for you to talk about this. If there's anything else that you need to, any questions you need answered, or if you want to talk about it a little bit more or share something interesting you found about the object browser, this would be a great time to go ahead and pause the presentation. Okay, Notes browser. The Notes browser is specific to the page. So if I say Notes browser here, and then I go to the next page, that note disappears. But if I go back, there it is. Okay. I encourage you to use the Notes browser if there's any chance that you might forget what was on that page, what you were planning on doing with it. And even if you know you're not going to forget, that's a great place to help in planning out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. If there's a specific order of what you wanted to do, that's a great way to do it. Property browser is probably one of the most intimidating and complex browsers that there are. And there are so many things that you can do, and without fully understanding it, it's hard to do what you want to do. Okay? Rule of thumb, if you look around long enough, you'll find what you want to do. Okay? We have things like identification. We can easily change this so that it's now called select instead of image 1. Okay, and then if we go into object browser, it's called select right there. Okay, so that is a very quick way of identifying things. Okay, now if you don't want to be hitting the buttons, changing things around, you want to be able to select them. Another thing that can help with this process is enabling design mode. Now, when you're at the browser, if you're at the board using the at the board profile, design mode shows up right here at the very top. Okay, if you are authoring, it is still right there at the top. Okay, so I'm going to go back to at the board, and I'm going to select design mode. And the reason for doing this is because I don't want to click on this and change my tool. I want to just click and look at what I have here. Now I'm going to make everything visible. And again, it might be intimidating because, I mean, take a look at all of the options that you have here. And you might not know exactly how to do it, but it can be a very good way of doing things. Okay, so let's take, for example, you've got identification. Keywords. Now, why would we do keywords? Well, if you want to be searching for things, then that would be a great place to add keywords. We can also do question tags and stuff. And, if you don't understand what it is, don't worry about it. If it's not obvious what it is, don't worry about it until you've become more familiar with it. Okay, so there's identification. Okay, all it does is identify the object. Appearance. Okay, in appearance we can change the layer. The depth is not something that we can really change right now, for whatever reason. Translucency bar, it's all right here, and whether or not it's visible, you can say false. And now, why would we do that? Well, if you've got a control that you want to go on top of an object, then you can put it on top of that and make it invisible. And then it looks like you're just clicking that thing. Okay. Now, that's appearance. You can so the main three things you can edit is what layer it's on. Change it from top, middle, bottom to background. You can change the translucency and whether or not it's visible. Okay, so that's appearance. Next is position. Now, this looks awfully complicated. Okay, but what could be the purpose of having, some of you might be more mathematically oriented or numbers oriented, or you want your presentations to have a more conform look and not be kind of haphazardly put on the page, like you see these objects are not completely level. One great way to do this is to take all these and set them to the same position. So let's say, for example, I want this to be set at 500. Okay, that moved them all down. Okay, or 100 or 150. Okay, they still don't look like they're level, but that's because I had them set. I had them all selected at once. Okay, so I'm going to go top 150 because I know that that's where I had that set. So that brings the top level. And I can do the same thing with this. Change it to 150. Hit enter, and there it is. And then do the same thing here. And then it is exact as a computer can get. Now let's talk about left. Let's set this one to 50. This one to 200. So we're going to set them about 150 apart. And of course, because they're not all exactly the same size, that's going to make it a little bit of a difference. But this one was 200, so let's go 350 on this one. Okay, and then we're getting kind of a more equally spaced idea. Okay, 500, and there we go. All right. So, as you can see, there's some advantages to using the property browser to do some things that you might otherwise not be able to do. Okay. But you can also view the position. For example, this one, the top is 338. So let's say we were to put everything on this line at 400. That moves it quite a bit. So let's change it to 350. Probably moves it a little bit down, but not much. And we got 350. And again, so this is for those that are, particular about how their presentations look. That can be a very useful tool, and of course it helps to put the right buttons in to make them all straight and conform, everything like that, uniform. You can also change the scale. So say for example I wanted this one to be set 2 and 2. Okay, so what that does is from the original image, it's going to magnify it that much. So I might do the same thing here, 2 and 2. Okay, but then I'm like, well, what if I do 3 and 3? All right, and then we can have absolute uniformity rather than very far from absolute uniformity. Okay. So you might spend a lot of time doing this. You might be like, I don't care. I'll just move on. That's fine. Okay. So we've spoken about the positioning from the left and the top, width and height. But if you do width and height, I mean that's pixels or whatever unit of measurement they're using. And if you understand that, great. But on the other hand, we've got scale factor here, which I think that's easy. You know, 2 times x or 2 times y or 3 times whatever you're going to do. Okay. Inverted, angle, reflected, or locked. These 4 options are great if you want to rotate it or change the image. If you don't like the way that something is faced, you can easily just switch it from top to bottom or from left to right. So it's like imaging, you know, just mirroring. I mean, great if you want 2 objects to face each other. You can change the angle easily by just going like that, changing it 90 degrees, changing it back to 0. Changing it 180 degrees is like rotating it from top to bottom. Okay. It's not an exact inversion, but it's a rotation. Okay. And then locking it, if you say true on locking it, then when you're not in design mode, you cannot move that, you cannot select it, it's there and stuck. But it still does what you tell it to do. So each of these objects are interactive buttons that change the tool that you're using. So for example, if I hit this, there's my select tool. Okay, that's why I went into design mode. It's because I can easily still go back into locked. Okay, that is something that you should think about, is when you're creating your lessons. Design mode is a great way to make sure that you have it the way that you want it. Okay, and that you don't get stuck because you accidentally locked it. Okay, label. There are 2 ways to do a label, and really what it is the behavior is either it's always on or something called tooltip. Okay, that's kind of like mouse over. And so if you do tooltip and you put the label on there, then every time you put your mouse over it, that appears. Okay, so that's a great way to do it. And you can change the font size and color and the background and stuff like that. Okay. Container, probably not something that we want to do today, but I've seen people make it so that a student could test their knowledge by you invite the student up and they pull the description over a specific part of the picture, and if it's false then it goes right back to where it was. Okay, important to keep things straight when you're doing that. Rotate. This is great if you want it to not rotate, or you only want it to rotate a specific direction. Okay, rotate step means how far does it move each time it moves. So for example, if I say 180, which I can't do apparently, maybe 90 will work. Okay, so let's take this rotation button that you can see and go like this. It only moves 90 degrees each time. Okay. You can rotate. You can pick a specific part on the page that it rotates around. So this is the center of the the page. You can pick. Let's see, another. Actually, that was center of the object, but you can pick another place, and let's see. Okay, so don't exactly know how it picked the place, but you can rotate. You can say around another object, and then you pick the object. Okay, and then we go like this. We hit OK first, then we rotate it, and it rotates around that notes object because that's what I picked. Okay, or you can pick a rotate point, which can be pretty complicated. Okay, there's also restrictors. Okay, so what do restrictors do? These are also kind of more technical things. It's like, for example, you move it and then it snaps back, that sort of thing. And this is a great way to use a container. So for example, it will send it back to this position if it's not in a specific container. Okay. And then you can pick the move path, for example, vertically, makes it go up and well, it's still set to do freely apparently. Can move vertically. Anyway, let's try this. Oh, we have design mode selected. So to do this, we go like this, and then we can't move it side to side, but we can move it up and down. Okay, my fault. And then miscellaneous, it's also kind of stuff that's not that important. Of course, we've done this one before. Drag a copy makes it so you can, when you're not in design mode, you can drag another copy down here, and so forth. Okay. Now, if there are any questions about this or comments, feel free to make it now. And then now we're moving on to the object browser. Now, I'm going to stay on this page because there's a lot of things that I pulled onto here from the object browser, and one of those is what's called drag and drop. These are all the tools that you can drag and drop onto the page. Okay, and so this is what it looks like. You drag that on there, and what it does is it basically puts these buttons here in your presentation. This takes you to the notes browser. Okay, so that's a useful thing to have on a page. You're limited, however. You can't put every single tool. I wish that you could, and perhaps there is a way to do that, but I haven't found it yet. As you can see, you can resize these buttons to be as big or as small as you want. One thing that is cool is you can have the revealer on there. Now notice this revealer for some reason is doing the spotlight, and you might ask why? Why does it do that? Well, let me show you. If we select this, and the current selection then is set to whatever I chose. So you kind of have to find it. This one I believe is circular spotlight, so that is what is highlighted. Okay, you can import a picture onto the page and set that one to do what you want it to do. Okay, so that is a useful thing. You can put a clock on there, set a picture to become a button. That's the current selection side of Action Browser. That is what it does. Okay, and there are tons of things, and we could spend hours just talking about these tools. So, feel free to explore and figure out what you can do with this. So it's really cool. Okay, drag and drop. We've already talked about this, but also a very, very cool function. The voting browser we will most likely not talk about at all, other than what I'm just telling you. This is for voting. Okay, the only way to use it is if you have the active expression devices, which allows for students to vote, which is a nice way of testing knowledge. Okay, that is my presentation, and now it's time for your assignment.